Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to the podcast. I've got a fantastic guest for you today, Nico Venne, coming to you from Belgium. And he is a confidant to successful CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs that are striving to achieve everlasting fulfillment. And he is the perfect guest for our audience today because a large portion of the audience resonates with leadership, management, consulting. And so I thought I'd bring him on and share his expertise and wisdom and contribute to the overall vibe. So, Nico, welcome.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you for having me. It's great. It's absolutely great to be here. Yeah.
Yeah, just to briefly talk about, introduce yourself, and I'm excited to dive into the questions.
The short introduction is I'm a guy from Belgium, a father of two kids, married for 15 years, happily. These days, that's an exception, apparently. I am a very versatile, different aspect kind of guy, but my major focus is on creating a listening attitude. So that's where the confidant part comes in. And I have excellent hobbies, which is asking questions. I love asking questions. I'm on the other side of the table today, so I'll refrain from asking the questions. And I am a founder and CEO of my own company with my name. And I have done a lot of in learning and development, coaching, mentoring, consulting, and I've been active for 25 years in either IT, sales, nuclear power. I've been doing a lot of stuff, but basically, I'm just a nice guy who loves podcasting as well.
Yeah, and I really love this because the more powerful questions you can ask, the more powerful answers. And I love talking to successful individuals, entrepreneurs such as yourself. So we'll dive right into it. The first question is: you've been in nuclear, even now you're a confidant. Which drove this dramatic shift, and how has it influenced your understanding of fulfillment?
Let's go back to the year 2006, where I was at a point where I ended a relationship and I stepped into a new relationship, and I didn't give myself the opportunity to actually mourn the previous relationship. So I went into a very dark side of life, and that's a point where I started to look into a lot more things than just the basic day to day grinding and working and so on. So I started working on myself, and suddenly I noticed this was a thing called personal development. I had never heard of it before. So I started looking it up and asking myself, what is this? And in that evolution, years later, I started meeting great books, start off, and then Stephen Covey, Seven Habits, for instance, came up. And I evolved into a position where I was learning a lot about myself and transforming myself, getting out of that dark side. And in the meantime, getting married to a wonderful person who I'm still with. And she as well has given me a lot of enlightenment paths before me because she asked me a lot of questions and we discuss a lot of stuff that are deep. And at some point, I came to a conclusion where I was saying, "Oh, this personal development thing is something really cool. I need to know more, and who knows, I might be able to help other people." And suddenly, something came up, and then it was called coaching. I had never heard of it except for sports, of course. But I was like, coaching, what's this? Okay, I started developing my skills in coaching, and then suddenly I noticed that I've been a coach my whole life because I have been in leadership positions where I was never a manager. I've never been a manager and I will never be a manager in the way where you direct people to do things. I have an automatic system where I always ask first and then go deeper and ask forward and so on. So that's where I learned about leadership and coaching. Now, coming down to a point where I had a lot of success in my life, always had successful jobs. I grew in businesses, joined companies in corporate environments where mushroom can grow in fall really quickly, pop up, and then suddenly it was like, okay, this is it. I want to do something else. And I jumped from one thing to another. And I had one question always coming up. What else is there? What else is, what else is there? And at some point, a couple of years back, I started my own business and then came to a point where I was asking that same question again. And I said, hold on, there's something here. It's not normal that I'm always asking this question. I always want to do other things. And I noticed that I never got fulfilled. So what was this? What did I need to do? I needed to learn to accept that success was not a destination. Success is something that you undergo and you lose it at some point. Sometimes you lose success and then you climb the mountain and you see another mountain and you say, okay, I need to get to the other mountain. You just keep on climbing all those mountains, but nothing fulfills. And that's where I started to learn about radical truth, deep connection, and enjoying the journey instead of a destination. And that's where I started thinking, oh, what is this? What can I call it? Because I want to help other people. And that's where the word confidant came up. Because as a coach, you ask questions, but as a confidant, you listen. And that's the only thing I do is listen to the stories that people bring to me who are successful. And by telling their story, they start realizing, of course, I ask them questions and I'm very annoying with my questions and I go really deep with my questions. But at some point, they start realizing that there's more in what they're doing day to day than what they're going for. So that's the story where I came into this specific.
Very fascinating. And what I really love is the way people use language. And the kind of the question I have for you is because all of us are successful in our own right, and we're trying to make an impact and leave a legacy. One kind of what are at the very top? What are the things that really plague CEOs and founders? Is it we talked about the journey and or the in the destination, but talk about this thing of CEO disease.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two terms that I use, and that's CEO disease and founder syndrome or founderitis. I call them diseases because they're actually a pandemic. And this word has a very strange aspect these last couple of years since 2020, but they are a pandemic. And a lot of C levels and founders come to a point where their business has become, how would I say it more clearly? They get fails in front of their eyes. So that everybody tells them the beautiful things that are going on within the company, but they're not telling them the truth about there is a department that is failing at what they need to do and so on. And they make everything look yellow or green, but the color red is not allowed in the Excel sheets. And that's one aspect. On the other hand, founders become micromanagers. So they employ people as experts, but they don't let them be experts. And it's because it's logical, because it's their little baby that they're growing and they're trying to grow with other people there and so on. And there's all these different layers and there's a lot more aspects about those two words. But it mostly comes down to the fact that they are too much attached to their business. If you want to grow your business and if you want to grow yourself, you have to learn to let go. And I love the movie Frozen. They said so many times in that one song that you get annoyed by listening to it, but it is absolute truth. You should let go of what you're building because that's the way it's going to grow. If you hold on to a tree, it will stay small. You won't. It's like a bonsai. If you look at a bonsai, it is an actual tree. You can put an oak seed into ground and then put it in a small little container and then start clipping it off. If you spend too much time on that tree, it'll stay small. Let it go. Just let it grow. And beautiful bonsai, by the way. I love bonsais. But the effect of what you're doing as a founder or a CEO, micromanaging, squeezing people out of what are you doing and controlling them and saying, no, you should be doing this while they're the experts. That's not a good path. And that's the outside aspect of what is happening. But the inside aspect is you are crushing yourself. Your inner self has become such a control freak that it scrolls together and starts squeezing and going. And what happens? You start going into these terminologies that have become hypes like burnouts and depression and stuff like that. Be a lot more at ease by leaving the work to the experts and be more strategic. Think high level. Jump into your helicopter. You don't have to buy one. You just jump into one in your mind and just jump out of your company and look at what are we going to do? Where are we going? And it's a completely different situation than what most of the founders and CEOs become at some points. And I'm really talking about C levels and founders of small business, because if you look at the corporate environment, It's a whole different vibe. They might also have fails in front of their eyes, but it's mostly in the small business area that these things happen. And that's where these terminologies come from, because I find sometimes you need to give the baby a name, but this is a disease that needs a name.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And so the next question I had for you is in this startup world, it's you have your startup and it's your baby and you bootstrapped it and then you eventually go into this like teenager, adolescent, adult phase, maybe sell it or take it public. So my question is with these founder CEO led companies, and there's not a lot. I think if you look at like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Apple, these are all found, but their CEOs have changed. And the only one is Facebook. Is it possible where like a founder needs to step aside to let somebody run it, or what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, at one point you shouldn't be a CEO. You should not be a chief
Mm.
operating officer. It's the chief executive officer. No, do not execute, do not operate. You should be chief strategic officer, stepping out of the day-to-day grinding of your company, because you come to a point where that company is run by you, not by the people that you employ, by the middle management, higher management that you actually employed to run your company. And yeah, the thing is, if you look at a classic example, and a lot of people use it, is Steve Jobs. He was kicked out of Apple. He was the big shot. He was everything about Apple, so on. He went to another company, did other things, screwed up. What I love about Steve history is he made so many mistakes and he made so many successes by making those mistakes. And that's also something that I found that founders have become to a point where they're too afraid to make mistakes. I have a lot of failed businesses in my past. I never talk about them. I should actually talk about them. That would be much better because it would give a better view. But there's a lot of stuff that I tried in the past that did not work. It did not work. And why did I try it? Because it makes me fail. And failing forward brings you to success. And that's one of the things that when you step out of that day to day grind, day to day operations as a founder, you can let people run the place and guide them. And you can actually, and that's the wonderful part, you can actually bring out the talent and power and the energy of people in your organization. And it's a completely different aspect than going into micromanagement and overbearing and trying to take control of all the little nitty gritty things, which honestly should not be your problem. You're the founder. You've done all the crappy stuff. Give it to somebody else now. Oh, yeah. It's one way.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. I love that. And but if you like I said, there's very few, and it's probably takes a skill set once your company gets to that level. So I'm always studying and watching what Mark Zuckerberg is doing, just because I know he's thinking ahead. So I always use him as a gauge. The other question I have for you is because you're a confidant, and I was talking to this with the last guest on the podcast. And one of this thing is where it's called Lonely at the Top. And like one of my college buddies, he started a company, he took it public, and he's the CEO of it. But he described this concept where it's lonely. He'll go to his mansion in the hills and it's empty, and then he can't trust anybody, and everybody, the close circle is just like professional, and so he can bounce ideas, but it's nothing like where he can't extend himself personally because he could get betrayed. Or why is this concept is just like one, you have a billionaire, that's all he has, no wife or kids or anything. What's going on there?
There's a difficult thing when you become a leader. And I really mean a leader, not a manager or a director or C level or whatever. When you become a leader, you become so much aware of yourself that you at some point need to find somebody who can be aware of you as well. So how is that done? That's by the person that you want to meet is enormously self-aware. You are enormously self-aware, and there is a connection that exists between those two people. It's very difficult to find that because there's a lot of shallow activity in our world. And when you end up at such a point where you millionaire, billionaire, C-levels at some point where they become so alone because their environment all have their own agenda. And then one of the things that I add as a service is in my role as a confidant, I will never ever ask one of my clients to give me, for instance, a review or post anything on social media because they come to me because I keep silent. I do not publish their name. And because of that, I create a trust environment where they can actually be themselves. And I can actually tell them really what I think of what they're doing. I can be the angry guy, and they're not used to that anymore because they always got their way. And they actually want, at some point, there's a lot of people that are in that position who come into dominance on the sexual side, for instance. They go into that because then somebody else can control them. That's just an example of what I can say. But the thing is that the term "it's lonely at the top" is real. It is absolutely real. And even in middle management, you also have that position. Even if you're an entrepreneur and you work together with other entrepreneurs, everybody has an agenda. And it's normal. It's just the human being. That's what we are. We want to evolve and we want to grow and we want to take care of our own. And we need an agenda to move forward. We need to see it into the future. And what do you get when you're actually at the top? It's very difficult to keep your agenda isolated and away from all the other people and keep close to yourself. So that's when at some point they need somebody who just listens to them, really tells them the truth, what I say by radical truth, deep connection. That's the deep connection part where they know when they come to me, I will listen to them. I will not judge them. I will ask them questions. I will be annoying. I will actually maybe even shout at them. One of my great examples is the ultimate coach, Steve Hardison. This guy, you really need to read his books. It's just amazing what he does. Just follow him somewhere. Is where you come to a point where you're alone, but you come to a point where you are actually happy by being alone. And if you come to that point, the other person that I just mentioned earlier will appear because they will be happy by themselves as well. And those two people can give each other the opportunity and freedom that is necessary to be themselves. And that's where it comes to being, human being. Just be yourself as you are. And it's very difficult at the top because you have so many faces that you have to carry, so many masks that you have to carry, and you become lonely because you're actually not your true self anymore. But when you're in that being and you're actually telling yourself the truth, and somebody's there who actually listens to you just for listening and not for judging or not for having you fix them, whatever problem they have, that's where they want to go. And loneliness is a very difficult thing to work with if you're not able to be lonely with yourself. So that's something that's very, very difficult. Your friend, for instance, in this case, I would advise you personally, as being his friend, just
Mhm,
listen to him.
mhm,
Nothing more. Just listen and let
mhm.
him talk. And no judgment. Just let him talk, ask questions, be interested, and just say, I don't want anything. You just go ahead, talk to me. It's going to give him a lot of space and a lot of opportunity to just be himself and get those masks slightly out of the way. And then, becoming a truer, more human being. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Very fascinating. And so I find myself as I progress in my circle, there's very few. And then sometimes I prefer to be alone just because it's so draining, just constant, just barrage and all that stimuli and stimulus. And I love your concept where you talked about where you develop yourself and you're like, I got to get this fixed and handled. And once you're able to, one of the best things I've ever heard was like go to a restaurant and just sit by yourself and eat alone and be comfortable. And it's like people think that's weird, but I mean, I do it all the time just because like it's just because you're comfortable with yourself and or go to go to the movies alone. Yeah, interesting. Next question I have for you is I know we have a couple minutes remaining. If you were somebody's listening to this and there are a lot of executives and share some tips with your 18-year-old, even they could be 18 or their kids. What would you say about life success and fulfillment, given your experiences?
So your question is if I would meet somebody 18 years old, what advice would I give them? The first thing, if I would meet myself, I wouldn't say a word because everything that's in my luggage is who I am right now. If it would be somebody else, I would say take risks and fail fast. Live life, be yourself and get to know yourself because the key to understanding the world, because the world is created from within. It's not created from without. If you look at the world and you start looking at everything that's around you and, oh, look at that neighbor. He's got a beautiful villa. He's got a Lamborghini and a motorcycle and blah, blah, blah. No, don't do that. It's losing energy. Work on yourself and become that person who has the big villa and the Lamborghini and the motorcycle, but only from the point where you are doing this for yourself. We are allowed to be selfish. And that's the only thing that's there is as you being selfish is becoming aware and fully aware of your inner self and who you are, then the outside world will see a person that is giving, loving, caring, who has empathy, because that's what we all want. We want ourselves to be loved and to be understood and to be us. And if you are that way, you love to do it for other people because it's the only way that you can think. And that's one thing that I would give an 18-year-old. And I know 18-year-olds, when they're listening right now, they're going to say, this old fart is 45 years old. What does he know about being a teenager and stuff like that? Guys, I used to be you and I know where I came from and went to. Listen to me. It's as easy as that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And how can people find out more about you and your work and check out your social media and etc.?
Well, you can find me on nicovandevenne.com. So just squeeze together my name, put a .com behind it, and just go on the website. There's an ebook on founder-itis. There's an ebook on CEO disease. I'm writing my new book on these two aspects and giving lots of tips and ways of how you can question yourself and strategies on how you can change whatever's happening. So first of all, you have to detect what's going on, of course. I pour out a lot of stuff. And on the other hand, you can follow the Everlasting Fulfillment podcast, where I also talk to business leaders about fulfillment and CEO disease and all that wonderful stuff. So that's where you can find me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this, and thanks for coming on and sharing your experiences and an engaging conversation. And keep up the great work.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. And I am grateful for you for being here, for doing this for your audience. It is such an important job that you're actually doing. You're bringing a lot of stuff into the world that people need. Thank you for being you.